So now I'm going to be talking to Sevan Bomar, author of the book Decoding the Matrix, and also founder of the Resistance 2010. And he also hosts a radio show, Esoteric Radio, and the 2012 show on Sundays at 11 Central Standard Time on esotericradio.com. This is a fantastic book, which you can read online, which talks about all this stuff, the Matrix, the New World Order, all the occult aspects of it, going way back to the times of the Egyptians and the Mesoamerican people and all this kind of stuff. It's very interesting. Sevan has had a very interesting life and career, and he's also been a lucid dreamer since he was young, and it talks about things like ascension, activation, and also DMT. So welcome to the show, Sevan.
Well, I want to say thanks for having me on the show, Sonia. It's a beautiful day, and we have an hour in the show, and I would really, really like to share as much as I can and as much solutions as I can to the situation that we're seeing in the world. But I just wanted to say thanks for just airing the show.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. I've wanted to talk to you for a long time, so I'm really happy to have you on today. So where should we start? Can we start a little bit with your book, The Code to the Matrix? What do you mean the Matrix, and what is the code?
Well, what I would like to say first is that, we do have an hour, so this whole show I think will have the feel of more of like the table of contents with all the information that can be presented. So I just ask people to keep that in mind. But with the Code of the Matrix was wrote about 3 years ago, and it was a book that was written by myself after a vivid spiritual encounter in which I went into a higher vibration, and I came back to Earth very fast, but with an incredible amount of abilities and amount of sight. And the first thing that began to happen is a full explanation of what I was experiencing in the reality and what kind of is underneath this framework that we're calling a matrix, which is organic and inorganic within itself, and just that whole experience. And so that's kind of what the Code of the Matrix is about. It gets into etymology. It breaks down really what's been taking place in the reality from the deity standpoint, the pantheism, what's going on with the gods, and what's going on with the extraterrestrials. And the book was made available 3 years ago for free. So people have to realize that after 3 years, what we've been able to accomplish now, since using the foundation of the Code of the Matrix as like a simple guideline to how to see what's really going on in the reality, or what I call, when you get to another level, the actuality.
Mm-hmm. And so what kind of things did you realize through this experience?
Well, just right off the bat, there was a deep, deep hidden message within the language. Like the English language in itself is a Kabbalah. If we see, it's 26 letters, and then, of course, 26 times 2 is 52, so there's 52 weeks in a year, and there's a lot of numerology that surrounds not only the language, because most ancient languages have a numerical equivalent to their letters, they're also to the symbol itself that was being used, and also the direction in which we were writing. And it really gets deep into, not so much as the Code of the Matrix, it gives everyone more or less a 101. And then you can come to the Resistance 2010 or astroquest.com. They lead to the same place. And you can begin to see, again, like I said, what's birthed off of uncovering what's in this language, and then exactly what we're dealing with within the reality. So what I've noticed is, through this spiritual process, which has to be done by experience, there's only so much that you can really read about spirituality, and then you have to get in there. And what people are talking about of what's going on this plane is because the actual plane that it is, which is not something that changes the way we want things to change. If you want things to change, you simply go to the next frequency up. And so it gets into how to really do that. The website gets into when you're on Malkuth, which is what they call this planet. They call it the kingdom, and it's ruled by a queen. And there's they call it the Lord and the Lady. And there's a Lord that sits back in the back and rules. It doesn't even really deal with the planet. It's really more the feminine energy, or what they call matrix. So what many people are thinking are masculine energies, such as the papacy. The papacy can really be classified in its own group, mainly as a P, or Chi-Rho, which is what they call their sign. But when you
what's a papacy?
The papacy, excuse me.
The papacy. Okay, as in the Pope.
Exactly. Okay. So when you see how many of the core words that are related to the Pope, they're all a P for a reason. And so that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with, well, why is a P when it flips upside down as a 6? It's really a spiral. It's also a G, because a G does the same thing. It kind of curves in. And what this really does when we're dealing with stuff that's called spelling, so there's spells in it, cursing, so there's curses in it, and there's a summoning going on with our words every day. And so if we don't know what they mean, this is one of the first levels of the hacking that's been going on with the human being and all its subsequent vehicles.
So are you saying that a lot of the meaning of this is all encoded in our alphabet and our English language?
A great deal of it is encoded in the English language, but once you get just the shapes, the entire thing is coded within the shapes, or some call it the geometry, but there's a curve on it. If you notice, the geometry that's generally presented now is only a straight line. Like you see the Merkabahs, they're drawn like the Star of David. There's convex, which means that the line is bent. There are convex or bent shapes that we also have to consider when we do our reasoning about hyperdimensional framework, meaning when we accept that we can travel, and then where we actually go, because there's other existences, there's things that have already been running. So when people talk about let's go into a higher state of consciousness or let's go somewhere, someone has to be able to map that out and be able to map it out before everyone goes into it. And this is really how our reality also functions, is it functions basically on premonitions, prophecies, more P's. It functions on a way where when we think something is going to happen, then the reality responds to us. And many people who have already taken the psychonaut adventure, meaning that they've actually begun to traverse into the other dimensions by utilizing the third eye, can clearly see this. Meaning the third eye gives you the ability to see exactly what is going on in the reality, whether you can withstand it or not. And so there is, of course, a lot of fear that's tied around the third eye anyway, from someone showing you a symbol that they're using the third eye, or from someone saying, well, that those people are affiliated with, the triangle with the eye in it. What it means is they have an active third eye. However, we have to be very aware that it's still the imagination or the imagination that is within our mind that controls what the projection or what you're sending out actually does. So there's one more point. So we've given a lot of credit to these individuals that do show that they have activity with the third eye, but we also have to realize that it's our imagination that is being used. And there are so many creative people. If you just look on Tumblr alone, you can see the creation of this world. You look at some of the CGI forms, you can see the intelligence, the level of creation and the visualization just from there. So we have to realize that as beings on Earth, we're sitting on a powder keg. We're sitting on a being in itself that is still coiled in its Kundalini and actually about to release its Kundalini, and is releasing its Kundalini this year, which is going to wake up and has been waking up subsequent beings in a ripple effect.
Okay, I have a question for you about, since you brought up the alphabet, okay, just for one. Okay, I'm not sure when the modern English alphabet was adopted. English having evolved out of a more or less Germanic language that was then also mixed with French, sort of half Germanic, half Romance, right? And we have a modern English alphabet, but at one time there were more letters in the English alphabet. Like, the ash, I don't know when they dropped the ash, but so was this code created at a certain point, and at that point they changed the alphabet? Or how does this work?
Well, how it works is that, there's an excellent book on this also. I won't say, I've met others that have been doing this all their lives, so they have even a more precise explanation of what is going on. But you can look on the Resistance site, and there's a place called Occult Systems. There's a group called Occult Systems, and there's a book in there that's called The Esoteric Alphabet. looking at that book will explain that. It'll actually explain the whole procession of the English language and when certain words were taken away and letters were moved around and different positions, etc. And what this does is, of course, it alters the state of mind, but what has been going on is an attempt to perfect it. See, English is still, it's trying to be a Kabbalistic language, and it's getting perfected along the way. Why many languages, they call them extinct languages because there's nothing being added to them anymore. Like Latin, there's nothing being added to Latin anymore. However, in English, we get 400 or 500, sometimes 1,000 new words every year published into our dictionary that no one really even knows.
Yeah, well, it's a living language, yeah. Well, that's interesting about the esoteric alphabet, because I've heard these things before, and I've always wondered, how did this come to be, given that the language and the alphabet wasn't always the same? But as you say, they're perfecting it. But you do see that English is becoming like the global language now, so there's something very special about English.
It is. It's functioning on the system of the tarot. The book is The Esoteric Alphabet by Ellis Taylor, and he actually gave that book away for free. There is an audio version also that we have for people that don't like to read much, but you got to get it in your system. This is how we're going to correct the world. If you look at the English language in itself, there's a matching of it right on top of the tarot itself. Now, the tarot is the Torah, meaning that the major arcana of the tarot deck is the real procession of the life of the individual who goes into the process of getting activated. So how this becomes introduced into the reality as a language is there's still a symbol of how we act. And I guess it's easier for me to break this down from another level. We have to understand the phi relationship with this reality. And phi is a pentagram. It's 72 times 5, which is 360. So actual pentagram does make a circle because 360 degrees is a circle. So when a person shows you, and you know they're affiliated with something to do with esoteric knowledge or occult knowledge, and they show you a pentagram, behind that symbol, if they know what it truly means, they've already given you their hold card, for better lack of words. They let you know their entire relationship with everything. Because the pentagram is linked to Venus in an unbreakable way. Because, as you see, Venus traces out the pentagram in the night sky. So there's these things, because the core story of what is going on this planet and what will continue to go on, because we're not linear, we're cyclic. So that story is in the stars. And how people in the ancient days read that story is because they had active third eyes. So the essence, the information, and the energy and the explanation of what it is coming in a light code from the stars.
Okay.
And that is programming the reality. So what we have going on is hacking. And to my understanding, out of my full research, is the moon, they do the hacking from there. Because the moon used to be inside of this planet and yearns to be back inside of this planet. And just because we're caught in between the moon and our planet, the essence that comes from the moon, it connects to us, because even we're still fractals of this entire system. So a part of ourself is yearning to be back inside of ourself, outside of us. And that's what I'm saying. And that part corresponds in a heavy level to our spirit, which is in a ghost-like state now because of how much work we've done on our spirit. So this is why the moon in itself is affiliated very deeply with gray, the ghost spell, or the Bible. Where is the dimension that they're talking about that these beings are going and coming from? As Jesus says, I am not from this world. I am just in this world. So where are you from? I wouldn't even think this would be important if there weren't millions of people that thought it was. You feel where I'm coming from? And I'm in a reality where there's a large mass that is actually taking their spaceships continuously into oblivion because they don't realize that they're immortal, meaning that there's never an end. There's what you perceive as an end, and then another one begins. And I talked about on the previous show on your network exactly how that really works with how when we choose to end a life, especially as an entire species, where we say we want it to be over, sometimes it can be looked at very similar to a child that doesn't want to take the responsibilities for what has been created and just wants to begin something new again. And we've utilized that ability, meaning that this kind of knowledge we've utilized. There's another kind of knowledge that we're utilizing. It's called I-Ting. Now, if I explain that word to you and we're Chinese and we're in the ancient times, we know exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about the system or the occult system of basically eating something and taking its energy. So as humans, we have to still realize what we're doing. And that's why adepts who are adults, and that's why those words are very similar. Adepts know this. And they operate throughout the world because they know this is going on. They know that you get what you pull out.
Okay, well, we're going into a break, but stay tuned. I'll be back with Sevan Bomar and the Truther Girls in a moment. Welcome back to the Truther Girls. So hi everyone, I'm your host, Truther Girl Sonia, and I'm here talking to Sevan Bomar, author of The Code to the Matrix. The chat room is open. That's truthergirls.chatango.com, truthergirls.chatango.com. And if you'd like to call in and talk to me or my guest Sevan, you can call 218-339-8525. 218-339-8525. And welcome back, Sevan. We actually have a call.
Okay.
I'm gonna go take that call now. Whoops, they just disappeared. Oh well. I guess maybe they got stage fright. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off then. You know, I not a big student of the occult myself, but actually I said let's pick up where we left off, but I was going to ask you about something different, so maybe I'll just do that. In your book, though, I noticed that you talked about the ancient cultures, and in particular the snake, which keeps coming up, and you also talk about DMT, and the snake comes up when in reference to these ancient cultures, and I know that this has something to do with the astrological processions, and also it comes up with DMT as well. Well, with ayahuasca, the snake is a symbol that people tend to see in their visions. Can you tell me a bit about that? Maybe you can clarify this for me. What is the significance of the snake?
Well, I guess the only real way to find that out is to become a snake hater. And I could definitely say that there's been a lot of snake hating going on and reptilian hating going on. There's a deeper part of it, of course, that has to do with our astrological switch, because, of course, we're going into a new age right now. And the previous one was related to the scales, or fish. You see fish have scales, and they call it Pisces. But there is a deeper symbol that's found in the ancient books, which just says it's the age of the snake or fish. And so because we're coming out of that, of course, anything we're leaving becomes demonized all of a sudden.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that the snake is the same as the fish? That the age of...
Yes.
But
it's really a eel. Like, that's where we get our word El, which is E-L also. It's a water snake. Because our entire previous existence, this planet had no landmass yet. And this is what's recorded within the deeper books that say that the planet, before our Bible begins, let me just make it clear, that our Bible begins with basically the God is hovering over water. There's nothing going on here. There's nothing alive. And then it says, let there be light. And then all of a sudden life starts. Any person with common sense knows in order for life to start from something, there had to be life in there already. It's how a plant really grows. So this place was alive before the eels, the Elohim, the androgynous beings did show up and begin to create landmass, what they call Adam, which means congealed blood or clay. So basically the previous cycles that we've been dealing with, they take place on multiple levels. Jesus, the symbolism was Nehushtan, which is the serpent on the cross. Now, the previous ages, if you could see, like when we came out of the ram age, the ram became sacrificed. And then it was demonized. So as we move out of these ages, then whatever we were doing before becomes demonized.
Okay, well, where does the symbol of the snake on the cross come from?
That's actually the Old
I've
Testament.
never heard that before.
Moses.
With the snakes, yeah, and the staff.
No, not that one where Moses cast down his staff.
No, the one where they had to look at the snake that was...
Exactly, there you go, exactly. So we got snakes going on everywhere in the Old Testament anyway. And then they begin to classify them. There's not just one. There's seraphim, there's cheshmalim, there's different kinds of them. And this is why. If you remove the human head with the spine and you allow it to leave its appendages, on the physical level, what you have there is a snake. Because our spine is what the snake really corresponds to. And so the electric energy, which is what's now called Kundalini, or as Dynamo Jack says, it's not electric. But that pranic energy is why the serpent became revered, because if an individual reached the state of understanding how to control that, then they became a fully awakened being.
Okay, right. And the Kundalini is also represented by the snake. And the caller is back, so I'm going to take that call. Okay, I'm going to take your call now, area code 763. Oh, didn't go. I'm trying to unmute it. It's not going for some reason. Oh, I don't know what happened. It disappeared again. Okay, so we'll talk a bit more about the snake then. So I always thought that was a strange story in the Bible, that they're out in the middle of the desert and there are all these snakes. So Moses makes them look at the snake. And then by looking at the snake, they won't get bitten with the snakes. I thought that was very, unchristian or whatever, to make you look at something like a snake to protect you. That sounds very, not the kind of thing you'd get in the Judeo-Christian faith. I never quite understand how does that make sense?
In the Judeo, but not in the Christian. The Christian is not there. That's not their doctrine. They're utilizing the doctrine from Jupiter. The reality is with all of this is that how this began is it began in the place we're calling Ethiopia. It's Nubia. It's the Dravidians, which if you see there's a huge majority of people here in the world, whether they're Mongolians, whether they're Chinese, whether they're Aztec or what we're calling Mexicans now or Costa Ricans, their hair is black and it's 8 ether, which is the classification of their hair. And you will find them even in Cambodia. So this is the tribes of what they called the tribes of Diana. And they became later known as Indians or Indiana, because once you die, you're inside of Anna. And that Anna is also the root of Anunnaki.
Oh, I thought they were called Indians because Columbus thought he was in India.
Well, look, that's the joke. The Indians that were here were connected to the Indians in India, and they were also connected to the Aztecs.
Yeah, like you said, it seems like there's some genetic connection. I mean, we have a lot of Inuit people here. They look basically Asian. You can't tell an Inuit person from an Asian person a lot of the time. Maybe Inuits can, and I'm not trying to generalize too much, but sometimes it looks very similar.
Oh yeah, they were just, these are Dravidians, which later on gets hacked and becomes David after the storyline change.
What's Dravidian?
Dravidian, which we spoke Tamil, which is the oldest language, one of the oldest languages, even older than Sanskrit.
Oh, right, I've heard of it.
These are the people who had that language, the language of fire. And anything curving, fire, water, that's what these languages, and that's why they look so appealing to us, and they have a lot of curves, is because those languages are fire languages. These are individuals that in their language is the knowledge of the spirit. In our language is an idea. I will say that now. It's still in the working, because most people only have half of the language. Since we're saying 52 would be the whole, and we have 26, then we have half. Now, the symbol of half is a D. If you see a half of a circle is a D. So all of our words, destruction, diablo, dying, they all begin with D for a reason. Mm-hmm. So once we start to understand this begins to allow us to go into the framework and the firmware of our being and make the proper adjustments that need to be made, because what's happened is there's individuals that were already in possession of this knowledge, especially where we grew up. Most of these radio stations that we're on now are going out to Western people or people that have been westernized. So sometimes we have to talk exclusively to the programming that was going on in the Western world, which has been rolled under the title MK Ultra, but is much more expansive than MK Ultra, because you had ideas to destroy the race mixed in with programming from ideas to blow the race into superhuman beings and project them throughout the galaxy, which are basically like the old cartoons we used to watch. Mm-hmm. So you had a group of individuals. There's many of these individuals own companies now, like the gentleman who owns the Harmonic Enterprises. These individuals have watched the entire consciousness stream, and they can tell you right now, up to date, they expected the transformation of humanity to happen 20 years ago, when they were out in Mount Shasta meditating on the heart chakra of this earth about it. But what happened is first of all, everything is done on the universe's time, which is pretty much complete at this point. And also there was a certain last piece that needed to be put together. There was a last level of knowledge. They say from the children from the West, reincarnated as children from the East, reincarnated as children from the West, that they needed to put basically the finishing touches. What's last will come first, what's first will come last, to boost this entire thing into what we now know is somewhat of a telescoping effect, meaning that we have to be, as Dan Winter puts it, squirted into the universe, because where we're at, what we're actually in now is a bubble. And what is outside of us is the big ocean. And that's why the ocean always became, in our physical, the ocean became to the ancients was the skies. Mm-hmm. And so we have different ways to work on this. This is why I want to encourage people, because you don't have to just work on this externally. You can always change your entire reality a lot faster internally by removing much of the strata or mucoid plaque that is in the system around the organs, around organs they haven't even told you, or glands they haven't even told you you have, and that is holding up your pollination. Because what is happening right now, what 2012 is really about, is there's a pollination going on, and that's why there's anomalies in the skies all the time now. Basically, at night, you got 5 planets hanging out there together. Then you ask NASA about it, they say, this happens every 20 years. But no one knows about this. No one's following this. No one has every day to be sitting there watching the sky, even though we should assign someone to do it. The papacy has someone watching the sky all day, every hour. Why?
Do?
Of course, they have the largest telescope right there.
Oh, that's weird. I never heard that. So oh, really?
They have a huge observatory, because the mystery in the scripture is that they saw Jesus' star appear first, and then they knew where he was. This is because every human being has a star in the sky that appears first before they're born. Because when you're born, it's your light now splashing and hovering over this water we're calling Earth, and you're about to go through 7 rays which materializes you. This is what so basically you just beamed in on Earth. And that's why when you leave the body, you beam out.
So does the star die also when somebody dies?
Nothing dies.
Does it distinguish?
The interesting part, it's the entire thing is cyclic. The universe you see is on a spiral. Your aura is on a spiral. Everything that's a wheel, like we have these chakras, is on a spiral. So this guarantees, it's hardwired that there's no end.
Oh yeah, I understand that.
So if it looks to go out, it's actually called implosion. You could see it if you were on the other side getting brighter. You see what it means? Because there's another side to this. And this is why I want to get people to understand how to think that way. Instead of thinking on this, basically a Pentium, a 1-core processor, at least try to get a dual-core processor installed. Meaning think about the other realm and why this stuff is manifesting on this realm, but it comes from there first. So go to the control point. Don't mess around too much with the external reality, which is always subject to decay. Learn how to emit your light that actually programs this reality into whatever it is that you are sending out. And this is something, and I'll tell you the truth, this has nothing to do with whether you're good or evil. This is the trouble. This is what troubles me the most. This power that I speak of, especially the third eye, has nothing to do with whether you're good or evil. It's simply a passive tool that once put into whatever being's hands, then it's acted out. See what I mean? So the knowledge of the third eye is standard. There's a few different ways to be able to access its abilities, and then it lights up the rest of the chakras. That's why there's a pine cone in the yard of the Vatican. That's why there's a pine cone in the hand of the Anunnaki, the birdman, putting it into the back of the skull.
The pine cone represents the pineal gland. Is that the third eye? Is that the same thing?
Yes. In fact, you have different glands there. You have the third eye, or the pituitary gland. You have the pineal gland. But what these are, for us to understand it better, are literally like mirrors. And when they activate, basically the electricity, if we would call it that, from one transfers to the other one. And if it can receive that, meaning it turns on, then it will pass it to another one. And if you can get them to triangulate, this actually begins to turn on the system, very similar to what you would hear when a ship is turned on. Like we'll just say, a spaceship. The human body.
How did you turn this on then? Does this have something to do with the lucid dreaming and the DMT?
Well, remember, there's different states of being turned on or being activated. So what we generally go through in this world is several stages of activation, or what's just called an occultation. An occultation is something that's happening whether you know it or not. You're in the invisible college, meaning that you are being schooled by Earth. And it's invisible because this tree, even a tree you see outside, is sentient. And it can be communicated with once you turn on the corresponding chakra to what frequency that tree is on. Now, the trees are always on higher frequencies. That's why if you eat more trees than cows, then you'll be on a higher frequency too, right? I mean, they've at least figured that out. Because the cows are matter. They're ma'at. They are the horn beings. They are flesh. So they have a corresponding frequency. And this is what William Reich and many of the individuals kept coming forth and trying to explain to humanity, Nikola Tesla, is that this is a frequency that can be manipulated by us.
Well, we're going into a break, though, but stay tuned. I'll be back with Sevan Bomar after the break in a moment. Welcome back to the Truther Girls. So hi, I'm your host, Truther Girl Sonia, and you're listening to the Truther Girls. The chat room is truthergirls.chatango.com, and the caller line is 218-339-8525, and I'm talking to Sevan Bomar, author of Decoding the Matrix. So welcome back, Sevan.
Oh man, I'm having a great time on the show today. I wish we had a little bit more time, but I wanted to hope that we can round this up so it makes a lot of sense for everyone. I know we kind of did the table of contents thing.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I want to ask you, though, about the lucid dreaming and the DMT and how this all factors in. You've been lucid dreaming since you were a child.
Okay.
Can you tell me a bit about these things?
Yeah. Basically, when I was younger, I was able to, I thought everyone is able to do it. Like inside of the dream, I could move. If I can move myself a little bit, then all of a sudden I would what I call unlock. And then I could start to walk into the environment that the dream was constructed of. But before I got to that point, I used to grab things that were in the dream as a child, and then I would wake up, and of course they wouldn't be here. But about 2 weeks later, I would get it.
No kidding. Oh, that's neat. That's far out.
I grew up in Oceanside, California, which is right by the military base. Actually, I grew up on the military base, and then we moved off base. And I just think that, honestly, when I really see the levels of intelligence that exist here on the planet, I just think that the youth right now are really, it's really on them. Like, this could have been changed a long time ago. It's just like there's something else that kind of has to be done. Like, we have to kind of save it ourselves. You see what I mean? Like, our parents, for better lack of words, our ancestors already saved it. Now we kind of have to do it. And that whole thing's got to play out. So the pressure is on. We're definitely in the crucible. That's what they tend to refer to this world. That's why sometimes the symbol is just a cross, which is a major symbol used around this world, if you didn't notice. But in a crucible, you're crucified. But it makes you 1,000 times stronger. You're hermetically sealed. Like most of the knowledge that we're using on our earth is hermetic knowledge. Mm-hmm. So when the release happens for us, which is really subject to happen for anyone at any moment, because it's already happened for me, it's definitely happened to subsequent individuals that are linking on the website and even just abroad. This is something that we really want everyone to understand at least is available. We're not necessarily telling a person this is what they have to do, because realistically there's many different cycles that are running here. It's not just all one same thing going on.
So, but are you saying that if you can do lucid dreaming, that what you do in your dreams will then manifest in real life?
Right. And so let me finish explaining that. So what happened was that I lost this ability when I hit about 13 or 14, when I started to really want to be just more like a boy, just out there with friends, hanging out downtown. And so I also noticed that there is somewhat of an innocent state of mind that is necessary to access the lucid dream world, at least for the first time. There appears to be a lot of protection, meaning that lucid dreaming is a privilege, and there appears to be beings that control whether or not you can completely go lucid or not. But again, it seems like the only preliminary test is that you just don't continuously go in there and do negative things, because you come back with the negative frequency on you and you bring the negative frequency into this environment. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is that what the lucid dreamer can do now, and we have techniques with this, there's an entire lucid dreamer group on the website, but what the lucid dreamer can do is at least get familiar with exactly how to wipe dreams, which is basically when you turn the entire field white and you begin to call up what you wish to create. And of course, anyone who's done this for a prolonged period of time realizes you don't keep creating yourself sitting inside of a mansion, inside of a hot tub, chilling. Because realistically, what you start to do is understand how to bring in pure energy. Everything in this world is now going to come down to pure energy. Can you get energy that's not contaminated? And so this is what also we're bringing. We're not bringing free energy for machines and computers and stuff. We're bringing free energy for the body. We want to eventually make it free. But this is by turning basically certain humans that have the capability, because they've activated their centers, into orgone generators. And everyone's kind of familiar with that, but it's where they radiate such a positive level of essence or a corrected DNA that it corrects things that people right now have no solutions on how to correct. Because if you notice, there are juggernauts that are being revealed, meaning that, whether we like the girl was saying, whether we occupy or whether we do this or do that, it doesn't seem to cause much effect. It's because we're hitting it like in its strongest point. The spiritual point is its weakness, because spirituality requires it judges you at every moment. So they only are winning over us, for better lack of words, because of our ignorance. Because there are good people here in this world. I meet them every day. We talk to them every day. It's just sometimes they're subject to this reality. So what I'm saying is that there are other entities, such as what they call archons. These are beings that are they have massive amounts of negative or 0 point energy accumulated within inside of them. This is also the knowledge of the cube or the psionic box, which is what you see them going around in Mecca at times, or you see in Judaism, they wear the box on their head. This particular cube itself collects dark matter energy. Dark matter energy can poison very fast the soul. So you're not dealing with people who still have a reasoning left to figure out what they're doing and what they do and do not want to do, etc. To transmute those beings, which is what is necessary now. Some people want to destroy them, but it's almost like what you saw in the beginning of that Alien movie, where they fired upon it and it only got stronger. This means if we use negative energy to try to fight negative, because we power negative, because we're positive, then it only is growing because of our energy. But so we can't line negativity up with positivity. We just have to understand negativity's place. And this is where humanity is also in the midst of understanding how to control matter. Meaning how to control all of this crazy stuff going on around them, where they live, where they work, all that. That's matter. So the lesson is matter, or ma'at, is Lady Justice. Whatever is going on with our family ties and lineage, or basically our tree, whatever is going on, much of that karma does continue down the biorhythm, the ripple effect, as they call it. We have this time where we can become hyper intelligent so that we can neutralize the ripple effect. They show you that when you play two frequencies at each other, they collapse. And then they create then fourth dimension. And there's only some people listen to this in the future, and I'm sure there's people on the line now that will understand this. But we have to understand how to work in these arenas where we're experiencing problems to neutralize what's going on in there, solve it, as the tarot tells you to solve, which is the symbol of the symbol of the sun. We have to solve this stuff, not go and attempt to destroy it so that it can recreate itself again.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the approach that people are using now, which would be like basically fighting against it, would never really solve the problem.
No, because they're doing the external, and all our world has been presented to us in an external way. That's what Christianity is. It's an externalized version of the Kundalini. Christ is Kundalini. So when we do it the external way first, it doesn't really work out for us because you have to become basically a master of which you see the Ma in the front of it. You have to become a master of being able to maneuver this reality. So,
well, there seems to be some overlap with Kundalini and charismatic churches. I have to say, like when you see the pastor doing the slaying in the spirit and just kind of touching somebody on the forehead and they drop down and start shaking, that looks a lot like activating Kundalini to me.
Yeah. If you notice what Osho would make people do is he would just make them go and jump around and scream and holler for 3 hours, even if they got tired. And then, but he would just tell them, you have to keep going. And then, because once you keep going into action, screaming, hollering, many times mantras, then the body changes frequency into whatever it is that is emitting the frequency. Now, this is the other thing. There are adepts here on the dimension, so things such as Buddha statues emit a frequency, like the bronze ones. They emit a field that when a person gets out of the body, they do go into that field. You see what I mean? There's geometry that is even within the statue that projects the portal that they go into when they go into Atma or their higher state of consciousness. So this, what I'm saying is, because I know we don't have much time left, this is totally laid out. There's no errors here in the program. We're on one of the lower dimensions. This is how it kind of is laid out. There are higher dimensions that are in physicality, meaning that there are places that you can go in the world, and you would think you're on a higher dimension if you understand frequency. These places are available. Central America is available. There's places that are pristine. It doesn't cost much to live there. You can come and establish things that you already have going on somewhere else that are paying your bills. Most people have learned almost to live virtually now. So what I'm saying is, don't think that the glass is half empty here. Oh my goodness, things have really they're just beginning.
Well, it definitely looks like you say that. Well, I do believe that things are cyclical, and this is what the Mayans also, this is how they perceive time also with their calendar, that it's part of a cycle, and that we're definitely coming to the end of a cycle. It doesn't mean everything's going to end, but something's definitely changing. People's frequency is changing. People's consciousness is changing.
Well, that's the thing. It's cycling, but it's a coil, which is how we're going through space. Most people see us as the sun is stationary and we're spinning around the sun. No, we're coiling through space and the sun is out there in front and we're following it basically, but we're moving. So when we start to see it like that, we realize that each time around the circle gets stronger, which is the secret behind Sufism, the way the Sufi dance or the whirling dervish.
And it all ties together. Yeah.
We're around the circles.
Sorry, but we're at the end of the hour. I'm going to have to ask you to come back on with me, though, again sometime so we can talk more. It's true we should have had 2 hours. But thank you so much for coming on. And, again, your website is theresistance2010.com.
Right, it's 2010, just Resistance.
Sorry, yeah, resistance2010.com. I'll put the link in the chat room. Also, there's more about Sevan on my blog, thetruthergirls.wordpress.com, and everything, of course, is on his website, including the link to his radio show. So thank you so much for coming on with me, Sevan.
Awesome, thank you.